Hello everyone and welcome to the first ever review on this channel, and I'm delighted to say today I'm going to be covering Resident Evil 4 Remake. Before I get started, I'd like to give a massive shout out to Capcom for providing me with a code for Resident Evil 4. You are absolute legends and you have my eternal gratitude. If you haven't done already, please remember to hit the subscribe button and also like this video as it helps me out massively. Also, please feel free to leave comments and talk to me about what you think of Resi 4. Right, let's get into it. At the time of recording, I've finished Resident Evil 4 a grand total of 9 times, clocking in over 120 hours of game time. I think that alone speaks volumes for how this review is going to go. Remaking Resident Evil 4 was always going to be a mountain to climb. The original was not only well loved, but it was a majority favourite amongst the Resident Evil fandom. Some would call it near perfect, with very little that could be done to improve it. The last 2 remakes Capcom have tackled changed their original counterparts drastically. 2 was undeniably good, moving away from its fixed camera origins to create a new beast that could coexist with its original. It kept a majority of the same beats while firing it into a new generation. The third game, however, was extremely divisive. Some would say Capcom changed a bit too much, completely losing what made the original so special in the first place. But, on its own, it was still very good and once again happily coexists beside its original. And that's one thing I think is important when it comes to remakes. We all have fond memories of the games we played long ago. The last thing I want personally is for a remake to come along and give me no reason to ever go back to the thing I loved. Earlier this year was an example of something that did the opposite. Dead Space. The Dead Space remake was so good, but after playing it I could comfortably say that I'd never go back to playing the original ever again. Why would I need to? It's the original game but with all the annoying parts taken out and also polished to the nth degree, making for a truly stunning remake. In a sense, I approached Resident Evil 4 with the same fears. There's so much about the original that I love that I didn't want to forget once the newer version came. Thankfully, this isn't the case. Resident Evil 4 Remake is the real deal. In the event that you haven't played the remake yet, or even the original, I won't spoil too much here, but I also won't shy away from a few minor spoilers, so you have been warned. At some point I'll do a deep dive on this game going into full spoiler territory. Of course, you still take on the role of Leon S. Kennedy and are tasked with tracking down the President's daughter Ashley Graham, who had been kidnapped and taken to a remote village in rural Spain. For the most part, if you've played the original, you know what ensues. A fun thrill ride through the village, a murky castle, and then an island location where all hell breaks loose. Resident Evil 4 keeps mostly the same beats as the original but changes small details in certain ways to put a fresh spin on things. Each location is familiar and not at the same time. I remember leaving the initial village scrap at the start of the game and entering the familiar farm, only it wasn't as it used to be. Yes, the big barn was there, but there was now a small puzzle involving a cog to open a gate. There are many of these subtle differences throughout, but nothing massively offensive that felt like it was there for the sake of it. It's all tastefully done. That's not to say everything is the same. Some things have been cut completely from the game, while other sections have also been added. There's one particular section in the castle which is completely new and also kind of cool. Leon finds himself on the battlements of the castle being accosted by an armoured El Gigante. The new, or should I say, redesigned locations in the remake fit really well and don't seem out of place. On the same merits, the segments that were cut from the game are not missed either. There's a particular boss fight missing which I was definitely glad to see the back of. Whereas the original felt fairly linear with very little reason to backtrack, the remake has made all areas now feel fully explorable, and in most cases lets you backtrack to earlier areas. This for me made the setting truly feel alive and gave me a sense that I was really choosing how to proceed through Leon's adventure. This was bolstered by the fact that the Blue Medallion side quests from the original have now been expanded into merchant requests, where you complete a task for the merchant in order to earn spinels. You know, those common treasure items that were strewn around the original. Well, now they have an even greater purpose. No longer can they just be sold for money, but instead traded into the merchant for items off their special menu, getting some elite items to help you on your journey. I often groan at meaningless padding in games, but these didn't seem as such. It was a joy taking a moment to grab something that was in my path, or having a reason to backtrack to a particular area to fight a very strong monster. There's quite a few missions on offer, but it doesn't feel overwhelming, and it made speedruns a little bit more interesting because you had to choose what was important to complete and what wasn't. One of the missions gives you an excuse to visit Chicken Island, so that in itself is worth it. Another recurring feature was the reimagined shooting gallery, which you simply have to experience. It can only be described as a party away from the monsters trying to kill you, letting you earn kudos and tokens which you can spend in a gacha machine to get charms for your attache case. Yes, you can customize your attache case, and it's wonderful. Each charm provides benefits, so it's worth picking them up. When the merchant's not busy providing shooting parties, he can once again upgrade your guns as well. I was concerned they might remove the ability to give guns exclusive powerful upgrades like in the original, but thankfully they are still present, even if they are toned down a touch. RIP the 100-round striker. All in all, the narrative and minute-to-minute gameplay flows flawlessly from start to finish. There's never a dull moment. During the quiet parts, you're either playing cautiously because you're not sure what's around the corner, taking in the beautiful sights on offer, or kicking ass in fights. The important thing is that it keeps you interested. No forced walking segments where you're waiting to move on. It's action-packed from start to finish, and there's always a sense of urgency, even in the downtime. In the uptime, all I can say is, wow. Combat and movement is just sublime in this game. They've had a number of games to improve it now, and Resident Evil 4 is the culmination of Capcom's hard work. RE2, 3, and even the third-person mode for Village felt like a testbed for what would eventually come. Obviously, they've adopted the camera and style made famous by the original RE4, so now we've come full circle and it feels like they've revolutionised it all over again. Base movement feels great, shooting feels great, there's a goddamn parry, which is great. Stringing this all together while you're surrounded by a dozen angry ganados is an incredible sight to behold. I thought I was fully prepared for the initial village punch-up, but when I was greeted with way more people than I was expecting, I suddenly realised I was in for it. Thankfully, the combat system caters for this and gives you the right tools to deal with each situation. You can now swap weapons on the fly, unlike the original, so if you've remembered where everything is set on your shortcuts, you can flick to each weapon when needed. The parry is not only a godsend, but it's also godlike. Parrying just in time is okay, but a perfect parry staggers your enemies and lets you follow up with melee attacks, perfect for clearing space or even getting a cheeky suplex in. I mean, what games are actually worse off for having a parry? None. It adds a layer of gameplay that you don't have to use if you're not comfortable, but for those who want to get stuck in, learn the timings and become a parry god, well, it's a game changer for sure. Much like the Royal Guard stance in Devil May Cry, it's there and the game doesn't suffer if you decide not to use it. But for those that do, damn, you're in for some styling gameplay. Of course, the knives have durability, but honestly it makes the combat all the more exciting. If you don't keep on top of your resources, you'll find yourself knifeless in combat and in a world of hurt. Thankfully, you can repair your main knife as well as find a bunch of smaller knives in the field. Even when I ran out, I'd always manage to find one in a barrel somewhere. The game has a habit of giving you what you need when you need it. This includes health items or bullets when you're in dire need of either. It's a neat feature and keeps things flowing. I felt like I turned into John Wick in certain moments because that's what you can create if you think fast enough on your feet. That's how incredible the combat is. 2 bullets to the face of one guy, they get staggered and I roundhouse kick them, another comes in for an attack to the side, but I'm ready with a perfect parry, whipping out my shotty to take care of business before dropping a flash grenade to stun the rest. These situations happened a lot. Every encounter is different and the AI isn't half bad either. I remember running to safety, or what I at least thought was safe, only to be headed off by an enemy. I tried to go down a third path only to find myself trapped. The enemies know what they are doing. In some situations, like the original, Ashley is also with you, but this time with a different set of commands. Before you could make her stand still or just follow. Now she is always following, but either close or far. Far is mainly used for when you are surrounded and need her to give you some space in fear of her taking a hit. Close, of course, will see her stick to you like glue, which is especially needed when trying to run through hordes. I think people were divided on Ashley in the original. Some would say she came across a little annoying or whiny, and a bit of a pain to cart around. Now though, Ashley is great. Her character has been designed well this time around, making her more believable and less of a hindrance. She still has a slightly flirty relationship with Leon, where you can see she's trying, but Leon only has eyes for Ada. Of course, Ada is back as well, having last seen Leon at the end of RE2. Ada, having seemingly gone through the ringer much like Leon, comes across a little darker and less jovial than you'll remember. In 6 years, Leon has become seasoned and hardened, and we can only imagine what Ada has been through. A lot of comments have been made about Lily Gale's performance as Ada in RE4, and regardless of whether you're a fan or not of her performance, making someone's life a misery online is not cool, and anyone harassing Lily over it should get in the bin. We are all allowed to be critical of things, but attacking someone is straight up nasty behaviour. The rest of the cast were also good. I initially had my trepidations in regard to the merchant, but after a while he really grew on me. Strangely, Krauser just didn't feel right for me. I felt he was missing that grisliness from the original, like the hardened military vet who'd had enough of serving his nation. It's only a slight niggle, and I otherwise feel he did a good job, even if he did feel a little out of place. Otherwise, massive shout-outs overall to the cast, especially Nick Apostolides for his developed portrayal of Leon, Genevieve Buchner for making us give a damn about Ashley, and Marcio Marino for a sterling portrayal of Ramon Salazar, a character that was always going to be tough to get right. For a large part, the script has lost its overall campiness, adopting the darker tones brought in by the recent remakes. That doesn't mean you don't get the occasional one-liner here and there. There are just less of them, which is fine, I guess. For me, it just means I can still go back and appreciate the original, which in contrast is a much brighter, quippier game. Although shoutouts to Leon for Nighty Night, nice. Capcom also chose to remove some choice lines and actually develop Louis Serra to be less of a creep. In fact, they've given him a lot more to do in this game, which is honestly brilliant. I won't spoil it here, but there's a segment with Lewis that I particularly enjoyed that wasn't present in the first game. I also really liked Ashley and Leon's chemistry in this game. I always felt in the original like Leon was just babysitting a bratty young adult, and more so that she came across annoying to Leon. I didn't get that sense in the remake. Leon and Ashley have a lot of dialogue even when they're walking around, and as the story progresses, you can see their relationship blossom, even if it's not as much as Ashley wants. Once again, this is probably helped by the sterling voice acting on hand. If you know me, you'll know I love lore in video games, and there is a ton of lore on offer in files and photos to explain a bit more about the character's history. The Los Illuminados no longer seems like just some cult, but instead has a rich history which you can learn about on your journey. Characters' backstories are expanded upon as well, teaching you more about how they came to be and how their histories intertwine with other characters or creatures. It's really well done. On a side note, with the release of Mercenaries mode also came some small microtransactions. I've seen a lot of talk around the fact that this is a little bit of a dick move and a blemish on what is otherwise a near perfect entry in the Resi series. After some time thinking about it, I think I actually disagree. For non-pay-to-win microtransactions, i.e. cosmetics or other single-player extras, I've always been of the mind that if you don't like them, you don't have to pay for them, especially if it's something you can already earn in-game. Like myself, you can play through a whole bunch of times and earn the rewards in the way you want to. These days, a lot of casual gamers tend not to have too much time to do multiple runs in games, and prefer to experience their media in short, sharp bursts. If buying an exclusive upgrade ticket speeds that along, then who are we to tell them how to spend their money? You could call it corporate greed, but this is not a new thing for Capcom, who have included microtransactions in most of their games for quite some time now. You could argue with the game selling so well that they didn't need to do this extra DLC to make money, but it's likely that this was already planned before release and they had no idea how well the game would do. Bottom line is, microtransactions are not new here, especially in Capcom games. If you don't like them or want them, then you don't have to buy them. They are there for the more casual gamer who may not have time to do everything they want. Speedrunners will still run the game without them, and modders can still mod away to their heart's content. So really, no harm done. Unless there's something of course I'm missing, which in that case please let me know in the comments. Overall, Resident Evil 4 Remake is a complete masterpiece. We never asked for a remake, but we got one, and holy hell, I'm glad it's here. Value for money doesn't do this game justice. With a lengthy campaign, a metric ton of replayability, and the expanded Mercenaries DLC, it's safe to say you get your money's worth. Not only that, but it's a fantastic story coupled with a mechanically incredible game. Even after over 120 hours, I still want to sink more time into this, and I'm really hopeful for whatever comes next out of Capcom. Keep up the good work, you great people. This one is an all-timer. Well, thank you everyone for watching my first review on this channel. I'd really like to know what you think and if you'd like to see more of these. As always, I'd like to give a massive shout out to my patrons for your support. You are all absolutely amazing. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. If you like what you've watched today, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button and also like this video. As always, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank everyone who's been watching deep dives, everyone that's subbed to the channel, and also a big thank you for all your support, comments and general feedback. You're all fantastic. Please keep the comments and feedback coming. If you want to keep up to date on what I'm up to, please follow me on Twitter at DonPedroX for regular updates on upcoming videos and other thoughts from my brain. If you like what I do and fancy supporting me, I have a Patreon. I'd like to do these videos more often, so any support you can give would be amazing. Right, see you next time.